Hey everyone, and welcome to lesson 8 of our beginner guitar series. And today we're going to be looking at working and continuing to develop our finger dexterity in both of our hands. So there's a few exercises that I want to walk you through, and that's going to help just continue to build on what we've already learned in the past, but continue to help you to improve with having a lot of control over both of your hands while you're playing guitar. And we've learned a lot in our past lessons. We know some chords, we know even about some keys and the circle of fifths from our last lesson. And if you haven't seen that one yet, I would really advise that you check it out, because when we get to the portion of just working through some scales to help develop these skills later on in this lesson, it's going to be good to just have an idea of what we're talking about. So you can check that lesson out here if you haven't seen it yet. But we're just going to walk through a few of these exercises today that are going to help to improve your guitar playing ability. So the first one is similar to what we've done in the past, except we are now going to be moving our picking hand back and forth on a single string. So this will actually allow us, as we go up and down on the string, to do a few different things. One, it's going to help us to build this motion where we're able to strum or just pick this string back and forth. It's going to help build that consistency in our strumming hand, but it's also going to show us where some of those weaknesses are in actually hitting that string over and over again as you're playing. So you can see you want to just pick a rhythm in your head. It may be slower than this, and that's okay. Just work at whatever tempo is going to give you that ability to play this through. And then slowly build upon that speed as you get more comfortable with playing that. And right now I'm just muting my chording hand or my fingering hand to be able to play with my strumming hand. And hopefully eventually you can get to a point where you can play that consistently and much faster. But start at whatever speed you need to be able to get that working. And once you've got a good handle on that, you can start adding in your actual fingering hand. So I would start on just our first fret of the low E string. And just keep working up the frets, one finger each. Okay, and try and get this nice and consistent with your strumming hand, and be able to use all 4 of your fingers on the first 4 frets of your string. And then you can start to move to the next string. So you can start on your low E, and then you can move to your next string. So I'll show you that here. So we're on that low E, and then we move our index over to the A string. Our index over again to the D string, and we're basically just moving our finger now to the next string, or our strumming hand to the next string as well. So you almost have this simultaneous movement that you have to accomplish, where you're not just reaching over now with your index finger to the next lighter string, but you're also switching between one string to the next on your strumming hand. And then there's that switch of the strings and the switch of the picking to the next string. Okay, so that's going to be an exercise that may take you some time. Again, play it at whatever tempo you need to get the hang of it at first, and then build upon it. And that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to just continue to build upon what we're learning to get to the point where we have these skills, these abilities. We've developed the muscles and the ability to play these different things that we can now pull on later on as we're playing guitar. Another thing that might be good to work on is still using that same back and forth strumming, but maybe don't hold it as long, just go one string at a time. And you're going to find that that's going to tire out your fingering hand pretty quick if you're not used to doing this exercise. So you can see my picking hand is up, down, up, down, up, down. And same thing with this one, you can move it along the strings if you want. And be able to play that all the way through. And if you want to take that one step further, you could even play it in reverse. Wasn't perfect, something I need to work on too. So it's just continuing to push yourself, finding those areas of weakness where you need to build upon your ability to play those different exercises. Now, moving on to our next exercise, we can actually start to use almost the same technique, again back and forth strumming, but now we're changing the way our fingers are going. So we're not going in order. We can go first finger, third finger, second finger, fourth finger. So up close it looks like this. That's an up strum on the second one, so down strum on the first finger, up strum with your third finger, down strum with your second finger, up strum with the fourth finger. Okay? And just like that last exercise we just did, this is going to really show you how much control, but also how much endurance you have with this fingering hand. And same thing with your strumming hand. If this is a difficult thing for you to get to so far, it's going to really tire this hand out. So, work on that. Again, you can take that to the next level and start working through your strings. And have that as the next step of that exercise so that you can continue to work on changing between your strings. And then you can even do that one in reverse as well if you want to. Obviously, the reverse stuff I need to work on as well. So, it just, again, all we're trying to do is point out the weaknesses in our playing so that we can continue to work on those areas. So our next exercise is actually going to be using scales to work on this same hand coordination and dexterity development. And we learned about scales in our last lesson, so I think it's a good thing just at this time to apply it. And again, it's not so much about just like grinding through scales, but it's more about using this to continue to develop our skills. And this will come in handy later on as you're looking to understand notes further along the fretboard and maybe even in soloing. But for right now, it's more so just getting the hang of it because we've just learned about scales and also because it's a good way to continue to develop both of our hands for playing guitar. So we're going to look at our G major scale, and if you remember from our last lesson, G major has one sharp in it, it is an F sharp, and we will see that as we're playing through. But the rest of the notes throughout the entire scale of G major are just going to be natural notes. And it's going to start on a G because it is a G major scale. So our G is the 3rd fret of the low E string, and we're going to start that with our middle finger on that 3rd fret. And realistically what we're doing is we're not actually moving beyond 1 fret for each of our fingers through this whole scale. So our index finger is always playing on the 2nd fret, our middle finger is always playing on the 3rd fret, our ring finger is always playing on the 4th fret, and our pinky finger is always playing on the 5th fret. And we should have, from our earlier lesson, already learned all of these note names up to the 5th fret, so it's nothing outside of that range that we have already learned. So we're going to start with our G, and then to work through the G major scale, we're just going to work alphabetically through our musical alphabet until we hit that F, which would then be an F sharp. So there's our G, our next note is an A, which will be the 5th fret of our low E string, pinky finger, because it's the 5th fret. Okay, then we go to our B, which means we've now moved to the A string, 2nd fret. Then we have a C, 3rd fret. Then we've got our D, 5th fret. Then we have our E, 2nd fret. Then we have our F sharp, which is our 4th fret. And then our 5th fret of that D string is once again a G, and that would be our G major scale. So I'll show you that up close just so you have that idea. Okay, and what I'm trying to do is still go back and forth with my strumming through those strings, but as I move from one string to the next, I always try and make that a down strum, just because that's going to be a natural movement as you're playing. When you move from one string to the next to slide like this, from one string to the next one, a down strum makes sense. It's weirder to go from a down strum to an up strum, because then you got to cross all the way over the string and hit the up strum there. or to go from an up strum to then another up strum, because now it's even further away. You're already above the string, and then you have to cross over the next string and up strum. But if you're here and you up strum and then go to a down strum, it makes sense, or down strum to down strum is also an easier motion to accomplish. So I always use a down strum when I'm moving into the lighter strings as the first strum of that picking pattern. So again, by interchanging them, if you watch this right hand now, okay, so you can see that I'm going down, up, except for when I'm changing between different strings. Then I am changing, even if it was the last one was a down strum, then I'm going to do another down strum as I shift from one string to the next string lighter. Now what you can do here, because we're starting on our lowest string, is you can actually have basically 2 G major scales back to back, right? So you're just continuing to push through that scale into the next one and following the exact same pattern because it's still a G major scale. So what that means is we play our first half. Now we've hit that G, which means our next note would then be an A once again. So now we move to our A on our G string, which is our 2nd fret. Okay, then our B, which is our 3rd fret, and then another C, which is our 5th fret. Now we move to our next string, which we are going to be hitting a D, and the D is actually our 3rd fret of the B string, and then an E, which is our 5th fret of the B string, and then we're going to finish off with our last 2 notes, which are an F sharp, and that's the 2nd fret of our high E string, and then of course our G is the 3rd fret of the high E string. So now we've got basically 2 full G major scales, one on top of another. So I'll play that through for you here so you can see that just from the top to bottom. Okay, so that's 2 G major scales together. Now, the nice thing about this, other than developing our coordination between our picking hand and the way that we're moving through the strings, and our actual finger dexterity and control, is that we have the ability now to move this shape. So as long as we can find a root note along this low E string, then we can play this exact same pattern with our fingers for any major scale that's going to start with that note on our low E. So we could now take this same pattern and we could say, well, let's take it from a G and instead we're going to play it as an F sharp, right? Well, our F sharp is the one note below our G note. So what that means now is our fingers line up. Our index is playing our 1st fret, our middle is playing our 2nd fret, our ring is going to play our 3rd fret, and our pinky is going to play our 4th fret. But the actual pattern of the playing is the same for these scales. So because we're still within those first 5 frets, we should still know all these notes anyway. But what it allows us to do is actually play these scales as we're learning these notes in other places on the neck. But let's say again we look at our F sharp. And you can see that still all works together. It sounds like we're hitting all the right notes there, because we are, for a double F sharp major scale. So now we can take that same pattern of playing through that scale and move it somewhere else, even into this section of the neck that we don't know the notes yet, or maybe we haven't learned the notes yet. So let's say we're going to move now up to a C note, okay? And we've only learned those first 5 frets. Let's just take that as where we've gotten so far. So we know that our 5th fret of the low E string is an A. Well, if we move to our next fret, that's going to be an A sharp or B flat. Our 7th fret would then be a B. And if we move one more fret up, that now puts us on C. So if this note, our 8th fret of our low E string, is a C, then we can put our middle finger on that note and play through that same pattern again. So now we have our index finger playing the 7th fret, our middle finger playing the 8th fret, our ring finger playing the 9th fret, and our pinky finger playing the 10th fret. And it would go like this for a C major scale. And even if we don't know the notes there yet, we can actually start to name them out. So we know that the C major has no sharps or flats because the key of C has no sharps or flats in it. And we know that the notes are all in alphabetical order according to the musical alphabet. So we start with our C note. That's C, which means now we have D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then we can continue on from there. D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. And we can actually start to learn the notes even that way if we'd like to. Or we can take what we've learned already to the 5th fret and extend it. So we can say, now we're going to learn the next 2 frets, or the next 4 frets, or however much you want to kind of chew off and learn at this point in time. But the more that you know where notes are on the guitar neck, the easier that it's going to be moving forward. Even sometimes to find different chord shapes. Once you figure out how a chord is built and understand that structure, you then just have to find the notes that build up that chord. And by knowing more note names along the guitar neck, that's actually going to help you down the road to identify where those are. Or again, if you're playing a solo, then you can know where the notes are for each individual key. So all that you're identifying at that point is where are your natural notes, and then what key am I in? Well, how many notes are sharp or flat? And then I just have to make an adjustment to those particular notes. And this will hopefully allow you to just have more control, more understanding over the actual guitar neck, the fretboard of the guitar. So again, we can take that shape, we can move it anywhere we want. That was C on the 8th fret. Let's say we want to play now a D. Well, we move 2 more frets up, and that's going to put us at our D major scale. And we can play that in reverse as well. And we can continue to move that around. So if you want to do it as an exercise to keep working on this skill, let's say you start with an F sharp. And then you move to the next note, which is our G. And then G sharp. And you're just moving your way up the fretboard using that same pattern to start to build that dexterity within your fingers. It's going to help you because you have to use both of your less dominant fingers, and it's also going to help you to start to understand what notes sound like they work together, because your ear is now being trained to understand that complementary structure of notes within a key. And you're also going to be able to start to understand some note names if you're tracking that as well. So the last exercise I want to show you has more to do with your actual picking hand. And as we probably know at this point, you're not always going to be picking through your strings one after another in either direction. So what we want to do then is actually start to develop an awareness of string distance. So what is it like to jump from one string to another while we're strumming? So let's say as we're picking through this, we're going to go from our E string to our D string, right? We're jumping right over top of that A string. It's not being touched. And we have to get used to what that distance is. So if we're playing something where we have to go from one note on our E string to another note on our D string, we're not hitting that A string in between. Now, a good exercise for this, one that I like, is actually by strumming down and up while you're skipping over strings. So what you do is you start by just muting your actual strings here with your fingering hand, and then you play a down strum on your low E string. Then skip over the A string and do a down strum on the D string. Then you want to come back up and do an up strum on the A string that you skipped over. Then skip the D string, down strum, hit the D string with an up strum because we just skipped over it, then a down strum on the B string, and then an up strum on the G string because we jumped over it again, and then a down strum on the E string, and an up strum on the B string. So what we're doing is we're starting on the low E, we're going down strums by skipping strings, and then every time we jump over a string, we're going to come back and up strum it, and then continue on with the pattern. So again, you have down strum on the E, down strum on the D, back up with the A, down strum on the G, up with the D, down strum on a B, up with the C, or up with the G, down strum on the E, and an up strum on the B to finish it off. And it should be like this. And hopefully that's going to help to develop that sense of how far strings are from one to the next. And what you can do then to just give yourself some time to continue to work on some chords that maybe you're having some difficulty with is you can actually hold a chord shape down as you're working through this, right? Make the most of it, get some extra chord time in with your chording hand. So let's say we take our A minor, maybe we've been having some difficulty with that. And what we want to do is just hold this shape so we know that we're getting comfortable with that in our chording hand. And then we're going to play through this technique here. And we can keep that chord if we want, or every time we go through one whole round of picking through the strings, we can change the chord. So maybe we start with the A minor, and then we switch chords. And we switch again. And again, it doesn't necessarily matter if we're making a song out of the chords that we're playing. We're just playing chords that we know to continue to work on developing that chording hand at the same time. But the exercise primarily is going to focus on learning that string spacing with our right hand. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Hopefully these just little practice techniques are going to help you to continue to grow just the ability in both of your hands to play guitar. And by doing this, it's going to make even chording a lot easier because you're going to have control over your fingers to a higher level than you did before. And you're going to be able to even strum a little bit better because you're going to have an awareness of that distance between your strings. So work on those things. Again, take whatever time you need to get through them, work them at whatever tempo you need, and try to slowly increase your ability and your tempo that you have confidence and control over these exercises as you're working through them. They're also really good for warming up your fingers, especially those earlier exercises that we were talking about. So if you're about to jump in and play something, even if it's just, playing through some chords, this is going to help warm your fingers up and even your picking hand as well to make sure that you're ready to jump into whatever song you're going to play. So, again, I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to just write them under this video, and I will do my best to get back to you for all of them. And I hope that this has, again, just been another lesson to continue to help you grow in your guitar playing journey. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, love you guys.